Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueRantBuilder.com. Since I'm no longer Rogue Deck Builder because I'm so frustrated with Magic, here with another episode of Tuesday Rants Day that is replacing Tuesday Brews Day. Hopefully one of these days we can get back to brewing in Magic the Gathering, but every constructed format is just a dumpster fire right now. There just is not one good format. Change my mind. Maybe Pauper, but problem with Pauper is I just haven't had the just have the desire to reinstall MTGO and actually play it on there. I'll give Pauper another try, I'm sure. It happens in cycles with me. I typically like to play Standard into Pioneer into Modern. That's the type of Magic I like to do is when new cards come out, test them out in the different formats. And unfortunately, these sets that have come out have just been making things from bad to worse to unplayable. And if you saw my last video that kind of went viral for my channel, it got 10 times the views as my normal videos do. My rant videos tend to be a discussion that people enjoy, so we'll keep doing that as long as people do enjoy these. I'm sure people will tell me to get back to playing, but I'm enjoying actually ranting about the failure in design that has been going on in Magic the Gathering. So Mark Rosewater actually did a poll. I forgot to pull it up here. Not going to take the time here and pull it up, but it was around 70% of people said that Standard was too powerful and too degenerate right now. He did a poll asking what we thought about the current power level of Standard. And there was only 7% that said they wanted it more powerful cards. About 20% said that they were okay with Standard, and it was up to like 60. So 2/3 of everyone said that it was just too broken. And then in the comments, it was, well, Standard itself isn't really too powerful. It's just there are so many cards that missed the oversight of design or the play design, which is supposed to keep these cards in check, that it just warps Standard that you have to play these cards. So we're going to talk about one of the cards today, which is Agents of Treachery, which used to not be that big of an issue of a card. It saw a little bit of play when it first came out in Core 2020, but now with Ikoria, this card has just gone nuts. And I want to make the argument that Agent of Treachery is an absolute fail of design, and there are a couple reasons for it. A, it breaks the color pie. Now, why I like to say that it breaks the color pie is land destruction has been usually something that's either traditionally red, but it can blend over into green, and sometimes even white can get a bit of land destruction. However, Agent of Treachery is worse than land destruction in the fact that you're able to take control of a land. So it destroys land for your opponent and gives you a land for yourself. And so I think that was a massive oversight in the design of this card. And I don't think that it was intended to do so. I think that they saw Agent of Treachery and then just said, okay, let's still permanent. And they forgot to attach on the non-land aspect, or they didn't think it would be such a big deal. And I'll make the argument that is the whole reasoning for why this card goes from being an okay card to something that warps the color pie to something that also warp Standard. Now, this card reminds me a lot of another card. This was Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. Teferi of Dominaria was definitely a push planeswalker. It's one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, 5-mana planeswalker ever printed. And the big issue with Teferi, which I think makes it from being an okay design card that would still be powerful to pushing it over the top, is that emblem that allows you to exile permanents, not non-land permanents. I think that if the emblem would have said exile target non-land permanent, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria would have been much more fair because you would have had to put win conditions in your control deck. Now, as it stands, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria was a control card, a draw card, and a win condition all in one. And it was just that very subtle missing non-land permanent that made this card absolutely bonkers broken and warped the design around it. And it had the problem with then being able to lock people out of actually playing the game. Now, Agent of Treachery, you can say, well, it's only one land, but the problem with Agent of Treachery is this is one of the first cards they printed also of this class that you can flicker it. And I think that this was definitely done by design. It's a 7 mana, still a permanent, which is quite high. And the cards that were printed before this would steal a permanent until that this permanent left the battlefield, or there'd be other clauses on how you gain control of it. But Agent of Treachery, definitely with its secondary ability of drawing 3 cards if you control 3 or more permanents, made decks want to be flickering this card over and over and over, which for 7 mana, that's not too big of a deal. But when you can continue to give your opponents, or you can give yourself, or your opponents can continue to give you permanents in the forms of lands, you can literally lock out an opponent by just taking all their lands very, very quickly. And again, this wasn't that big of a deal until Enter in, I would say, really into Guilds of or Ravnica Allegiance when they added a bunch of ramp cards, and then War of the Spark when they added Nissa, and then it insanely got pushed when they added in Theros with Euro. There was another ramp card. And then finally into now with Ikoria with ways to cheat in Agent of Treachery. Now, this is what's happened with Agent of Treachery. Of course, you see this big spike here. It is now dominating the format because every deck is basically using Agent of Treachery. Even some of these Esper control decks have Agent Treacheries in the sideboard. These Bant Wrap decks, a vast majority of them are trying to ramp in to the Agent of Treachery, as you can see here. These Azorius Blink decks are blinking. Basically, they're just trying to control the field until they can blink Agent of Treachery over and over to steal all the lands. Even decks like Temur Elementals, even in Jeskai Fires lists and Jeskai control lists. But lately, it's been this nonsense with the cards that have come out of Ikoria that have really just made this a busted card. We can cheat it out as quickly as turn number 4 with Winota, or even with a little bit of a ramp with the Luca decks, and then flicker it with the Yorion. So the Yorion Luca decks have definitely taken over the meta. This was a non-existent deck a couple weeks ago, and you can already see it's up to 15% of the meta. It's just completely pushed out at the other decks, and this version of Yorion Bant Ramp also is going to use Agent of Treachery as the win con by eventually locking out of your opponent with having the ability to actually cast spells. So I don't know how. This has been my problem. This is one of the examples from my video last week of where I just do not know how that these cards were able to get out of designs without their glaring problems. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria always made me shake my head. Did they test this card? Did they actually implement and then realize that you can just start destroying lands? This card would give opponents ability to come back from the game if it wasn't able just to lock out of lands at that point, and lock out very quickly once Teferi gets up to -8, and then you start just exiling the lands. In fact, lands a lot of times would be the preferable target, even over a possible threat at that point. If the threat wasn't something that would finish the game immediately, you could just start cracking off lands so your opponents couldn't cast better threats to end the game. So same thing with Agent of Treachery. This card would be probably a lot more fair if, let's say, you just go, and your opponent goes Winota, Agent of Treachery, and then there's nothing to actually grab with it. So say, for example, you just cast a Euro that turn and ramped up a land, and your opponent goes Winota, attacking with a token, hit an Agent of Treachery, and then it's just a 2/3 that doesn't hit anything. That is a lot better of a scenario than taking a land. And the fact that Agent of Treachery is always going to have something to steal, and meaning same thing when it gets blinked over and over, it's always going to have something to steal, and always have a way to lock the opponent out from playing more cards, makes this a very poor design card. Now, people might disagree with me. Maybe they say that this sort of card has a place in Magic the Gathering, possibly, but not in a meta where you can definitely cheat out these 7-drops or ramp into them so easily. That seems to be the theme of the standard right now, is we have a lot of big mana spells like Wilderness Reclamations and Jeskai or Fires of Invention, and then you have a lot of ramp. Just the amount of ramp right now in standard, yes, we're not really to the point where we have some of the 2-mana ramp spells as far as rampant growth, but we have 2 4-mana versions of a very popular, I can't think of the original one where you just go get 2 lands. We have the one that goes and gets Gates right now, and we have the cycling one out of Ikoria, that even if we took away the ways that are cheating it in with like Winota and the other Planeswalker, I still think that the ramp strategy is definitely there, and the fact of Nissa and the format. Even take Nissa out, I think people will still be ramping into Agent of Treachery, and just the shenanigans that surrounds Agent of Treachery then being blinked and reanimated and whatnot. So again, I think that this was just a glaring problem with play design, that they weren't able to catch this, and I'll make the argument that these sort of cards need to have the non-land permanent. If you want to be able to destroy lands, I think it needs to be true to the color pie. You can't have it meld into a big draw color. And that's really the problem with standard too, is we've been ridden with ramp decks for a long time now with green blue. Green blue has just really dominated standard because we have a very, very powerful ramp package, and we have a very, very powerful control and draw package in the form of the blue cards that have been printed. And a lot of blue cards even have very decent threats. Lately, sometimes you look like going even back to like Torrential Gearhulk. It was the best Gearhulk. So blue typically had to splash in other colors to find their better threats, or their threats were just weaker. And those even been pushed to the point that the blue, the draw, the disruption, and now with cards like Agent of Treachery, they actually do the locks. There's really no point to be playing other colors than blue at this time. So again, this is what needs to happen. This is these sorts of missing these key words such as non-land permanent is where design needs to really start to focus on and not let these sort of cards slip through the cracks. So I want this card banned. I think it's a trash card that should have never been out of play design. It should have either had a higher mana cost, or I don't know how they could actually balance this without. It just shouldn't be able to hit lands is, I guess, the whole discussion of this video. And yeah, let me know in the comment section how you think about this. I did a whole video on my Rogue Market channel. I think Grafdigger's Cage is the only solution we have, but then that still doesn't take away the fact that they can still ramp it in with the Bant Wrap strategies and then still flicker it later on. And yeah, it's just become a nuisance. It's just warp standard. You even see this card hit Pioneer every now and again, and the more ways to cheat this out. It's even obnoxious in Commander, where I think this card was basically printed for the Commander format. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this rant, and I'll definitely be making this a weekly, maybe bi-weekly thing where I'll complain about everything Magic the Gathering related. This has been Kevin with Rant Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.